Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Hope you're doing well, hope you're having a good Wednesday wherever you're watching or listening to this. Once again, going through some Chelsea news. We'll look at players returning to Cobham. We'll look at Mateo Kovacic, who of course his World Cup campaign came to an end against Argentina on Tuesday night. And then we'll look at Rafael Leao, another big transfer target for Chelsea heading in to 2023. But before we get into any of that good stuff, you know the drill by now. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of the uploads on the channel, regular Chelsea content on this channel. And if you are listening on the podcast, thank you so much for tuning in. Son of Chelsea is a part of the 90 Min podcast network. But let's get into the news firstly here via my colleague and good friend Adam Newson tweeting this morning that you should start seeing those Chelsea players who exited the World Cup early returning to Cobham from today. Less than 2 weeks now until the season restarts. We are getting closer, and Chelsea have got another friendly lined up this week back at Cobham against Brentford, another Premier League club, and maybe some of those players who are returning a little bit early, the likes of Kai Havertz, Christian Pulisic, maybe Kalidou Koulibaly and Edouard Mendy will be back involved. It surprised me a little bit how many are actually going to be involved by the time we reach the Bournemouth game in 2 weeks after Christmas, because I just expected, usual time players who go quite advanced in this tournament would get more of a break, but not really the same as that summer tournament where they usually get 2 to 3 weeks off, even if they do get knocked out in the group stage. That is not the case this time around, particularly for those it's kind of harder for those players who've exited later in the tournament. Like Mateo Kovacic, we don't know when he'll be back at Chelsea. I assume he's not going to be available for the Bournemouth game, but he's had a very good tournament for Croatia. He really has. Considering the injury problems he's had, I don't think he's quite hit the form at all really that he showed last season for Chelsea. Like a few other Chelsea players, I think has very much used this tournament as sort of a platform to regain some confidence, and hopefully he can return to Chelsea with that as well. With 90 minutes played, he had 105 touches, a 94% pass accuracy, made 3 key passes, completed 2 out of 3 long balls, 3 out of 5 dribbles completed, 9 out of 14 ground duels, 1 and 3 tackles. It was one of those classic Kovacic performances where you look at him once again, and in that middle third, he really, makes good ground. He gets through challenges. He really helps the team advance up the pitch. But it's always about kind of that last phase where, if he did have that pass to him, which, listen, it's not a simple thing to ask a player to have all of that. I think the attributes that Kovacic has taken into a very elite level. But it's just always that part of his game that I think has been the biggest criticism of that sort of that productivity. But I think for his sake, like a lot of Chelsea players, particularly Ziyech as well, who's in the other semi-final tonight, this has been a positive period for him. And given that injury, there was some concern maybe when he returns to Chelsea, he'd have to have surgery. He may still do. I really hope not, because I think, this is one of those players who you would like to see feature on a regular basis if he can continue some good form. Another player who was involved last night who got some criticism that I do want to mention is Josko Vardiol. Obviously has been linked to Chelsea before. We have spoken about him on the podcast recently. He's had a brilliant World Cup. For a 20-year-old, he's really dominated things. His nation going to a semi-final, he's been a massive part of that. I think he's probably been the best defender in the tournament. That may change, obviously, after last night. But I saw a lot of things about, Lionel Messi has shown up. Josko Vardiol being shown up by Lionel Messi is like being beaten by Roger Federer at Wimbledon. It kind of has happened to everyone at this point. So, I don't quite see the massive headline. It'll be bruising for him, obviously, but particularly in the move that people are talking about for the third goal. I mean, once Messi gets inside the box, I'm not quite sure what Vardiol's supposed to do, because there's always the danger if he dives in of giving away a penalty, and it's Lionel Messi. This is to a lot of people, the greatest player of all time, and he's 20 years old. We're not talking about a player in their prime. We're talking about someone who's got years and years left to go, and obviously we don't know if he's going to arrive at Chelsea, but I wanted to mention that as well, because I did find that a bit silly, like all the headlines about Vardiol being ruined by Lionel Messi. I just found it a little bit dramatic, really, and I think obviously he's had a great tournament, and I think it looks like he's going to have a really good career. Let's move on to some Chelsea stuff. We spoke about Armando Broja, his injury. The club confirming it today in a statement that scan results from those assessments on Broja have unfortunately confirmed an anterior cruciate ligament rupture and that surgery will be required, and he's expected to miss the remainder of the 2022-23 campaign. This was very much expected after reports made yesterday that we discussed, and Broja went to his Instagram shortly after the news to say this: devastated to be ending 2022 in this way. It's been difficult to process everything over the past few days, but I am determined to come back even stronger and better than before. Everyone has their own journey to the top. This is just a minor setback for the good things to come in the future. Thank you for everyone who has sent messages of support. It means a lot. For Broja, it was going to be his sort of breakthrough season, but unfortunately that's not the way it's going to be for him, and hopefully he does return in strong health and can impact things again. But we know how quickly things change at Chelsea, but I look at him as a player, as a prospect, the comparisons to a certain striker who I love very fondly, and I think Chelsea should persist with Armando Broja, and I hope he does get the recovery he needs. And listen, that's just the way it is, and it feels like just typical of Chelsea season and year, the consistent injury problems we've had to good players. Let's move on to the second story, and kind of the rest of this news video is going to be about Rafael Leao. We have spoke about Leao on the channel before. He is one of those names that out of many, going into 2023, Christopher Nkunku, Vardy, who we've already spoken about, these names that consistently be linked. I think maybe you throw Declan Rice's name in there as well, who could be big names arriving at Stamford Bridge in 2023 across the two transfer windows. And Leao, Portugal, of course, it ended for them swiftly at the World Cup. I don't think many expected them, particularly after their dominant performance against Switzerland, to go out to Morocco. But Morocco have had an incredible tournament. And for Leao, I don't think I don't think you should forget about what he did at that tournament. I've seen some criticism for the way he's been deployed at the international stage compared to what he does for AC Milan. But he still scored 2 goals. The second against Switzerland was just a wonderful, one of my favourite goals of this World Cup. It really was just the way he cut in, dribble, the trickery, just everything about Leao kind of encapsulated in one moment. And we've got reports from Florian Plettenberg, who's a Sky Sport reporter, claiming that Rafael Leao doesn't want to extend his current AC Milan contract beyond 2024, and at Chelsea have held talks about Leao in Qatar. They've had a €70 million offer refused, with Milan wanting the full €150 million release clause. That was a figure that was bandied about at the back end of the summer transfer window, over 100 million for Leao, and those reports really haven't gone away, because I think mainly helped by the fact Chelsea drew AC Milan in the Champions League. So Chelsea got a very close look at Leao. And, he's continued to score goals in Serie A for AC Milan. He scored some goals in the Champions League that helped them progress to the last 16. And I'm not conflicted about Leao. The best thing, and I've said this before when people have asked me about Leao and kind of what he did against Chelsea. The most impressive thing when I watched Leao against Chelsea back in October was his physique. It sounds a very simple thing, but kind of just the way he imposed himself and looked imposing on that pitch against Chelsea's defenders. As a wide player, coming into a very physically demanding league like the Premier League, and what opposition defenders would try to do to nullify him, I think he'd be able to handle himself very well. But of course, he's got great speed, he's got great technique, he's able to get out of tight areas, and as well, he's got an eye for a goal. He's clearly productive in the final third. He makes good decisions there. I think the biggest concern for him is his work off the ball. Now, I think there absolutely is a debate around pressing, and I do think it's more of kind of a philosophical debate in football moving forward, is, how much should players be restricted, good players who clearly do good things on a pitch, be restricted in their career if they're not a pressing monster? Because pressing is such a big trend now, a consistent trend across the top European teams, just across European football. If you don't have that, do you progress? Will coaches not really trust you? And for Chelsea to fork out that much for Leao, and then he comes to the Premier League, comes to Chelsea, and we kind of have a Lukaku situation or a Ronaldo situation where he doesn't press off the ball, and that becomes an awkward thing for Graham Potter. there is another part to that is what he's being asked to do currently, and could that be evolved? Because he still is a young player, 23 years old. Could he change and evolve and get better at that in his career? I think that's the big question. And there are obviously examples, and the examples of players not pressing and doing amazing things are freakish players. They're, Kylian Mbappe, Lionel Messi. It's caught up with Ronaldo in the end, but at one point Ronaldo too. If Leao is that talent, which at times you look at him and think, wow, that could be an incredible player moving into the next 5 to 6 years, and exactly why big clubs want to go and sign him. Can you compensate for that? I think that's my big question around Leao as a player. But there absolutely is, many Chelsea fans who feel like this is the guy, this is someone who should be prioritised and maybe could change things up for Chelsea's attack in 2023, with Nkunku coming in as well, hopefully, in the new year. But let me know your opinions on Leao. Do you think Chelsea should be paying this much for him? Do you think there are better options out there? Let me know in the comments below. But that is it for today's edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.